Elizabeth stood by the window, her fingers grazing the glass as she stared out into the darkness. A single street lamp flickered, casting long shadows over the pavement where she and her sisters had once played. If she closed her eyes, she could still hear their laughter, the way they had chased fireflies barefoot, the way their mother had called them inside for dinner, her voice warm and full of love. But that was a lifetime ago. Now the house was silent, the walls heavy with things left unsaid. "I can't believe it's been 5 years since Mom passed," Elizabeth murmured, her voice barely breaking the hush that had settled between them. Behind her, Amelia lingered in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, as if shielding against the chill in the air, or maybe the chill in her own heart. She hadn't wanted to come back. Every step through the familiar halls felt like stepping through a ghost story, one where every shadow whispered her name. She hadn't spoken much since arriving. She didn't know how. The years apart had turned them into strangers, and she wasn't sure if they could ever find their way back to who they used to be. "We all have our own lives now," Amelia finally said, her voice quieter than she intended. The words felt like an excuse, one she wasn't sure she believed. Sarah, the youngest, sat curled up in their mother's old armchair, a half-empty wineglass dangling between her fingers. She had always been the peacemaker, the one who tried to hold them together even when everything was falling apart. But tonight, even she seemed exhausted. She let out a breathy, humourless laugh. "I can't believe we're still fighting over the house," she said. "Mom would be rolling in her grave." The words were meant to be light-hearted, but they landed like a stone in the room, heavy and inescapable. Elizabeth turned, her eyes searching her sisters' faces. "Why do we always avoid talking about it?" she asked, her voice raw. "This house isn't just a house. It's her. It's us. It's the last piece of what we had, and now it's slipping through our fingers." Amelia felt something crack inside her at Elizabeth's words. She had spent so long trying to convince herself that leaving had been the right choice, that she had done what she had to do to survive. But standing here now, looking at Elizabeth, the sister who had stayed, who had carried the weight of their mother's absence alone, she felt guilt coil around her like a vine. "I don't need it," Amelia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You can keep it, Liz." Sarah scoffed, setting her glass down with an unsteady hand. "No one needs to keep it," she shot back, her voice sharper than before. "It's just bricks and wood. What we need is to stop pretending like we don't feel anything about Mom's death. We need to stop pretending like we're not broken." The air in the room tightened, as if the house itself was listening, waiting. Elizabeth's lips trembled, but she steadied herself. "And what are we supposed to do, Sarah?" she asked, the pain in her voice spilling over. "Pretend like everything's fine? Like we're not standing here as 3 women who barely know each other anymore?" Sarah blinked back tears. "No," she whispered. "We stop pretending. We start being honest." Silence stretched between them, thick and fragile. Elizabeth inhaled shakily. "I just want us to be a family again," she admitted, the tears finally slipping free. "I want to remember the good times, the way we used to laugh, the way we had each other's backs. I can't do this alone anymore." Amelia flinched at the words, the weight of her absence pressing down on her chest. Sarah turned to her, her voice softening. "Why did you leave, Amelia?" she asked, her brown eyes filled with something almost childlike, something like hope. "You disappeared when we needed you the most." Amelia's throat tightened. How could she explain it? How could she make them understand that leaving had never been about them? It had been about her. About the suffocating expectations, the fear of not being enough, of failing them, of failing herself. She took a shaky breath. "I couldn't stay," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I couldn't watch Mom die. I couldn't bear the way this house felt like a tomb before she was even gone. I felt like I was drowning, and I had to get out." Elizabeth let out a choked sound, part sigh, part sob. "And what about us, Amelia?" she whispered. "What about what we needed?" Amelia met her gaze, eyes glistening. "I thought leaving would make it hurt less," she confessed. "But it didn't. It just made me miss you both more." Sarah reached out first, hesitating only a second before placing a hand on Amelia's shoulder. The touch was light, barely there, but it shattered something inside Amelia. "You don't have to run anymore," Sarah said gently. "We're right here. We always have been." Amelia's breath hitched. She had spent so long believing she had lost them that she had burned the bridges between them beyond repair. But standing here now, feeling the warmth of Sarah's touch, seeing the tear-streaked face of Elizabeth, she realized something. They had been waiting for her to come home. Slowly, hesitantly, Amelia reached up and placed her hand over Sarah's. Elizabeth stepped forward next, her expression crumbling as she wrapped Amelia in a tight embrace. And this time, Amelia didn't pull away. Sarah joined them, the three of them holding on to each other, not as the broken pieces of who they used to be, but as something new, something fragile, something healing, something whole. The house around them seemed to exhale, as if it too had been waiting for this moment. It wasn't perfect, but love never was. And for the first time in years, they weren't just standing in the same house. They were home.